Hey guys, Max here, and of course yesterday was a bad day to be an investor, not only because stocks fell for the most part, but because we had some pretty poor news regarding inflation, following about an entire year of really bad news regarding inflation. We will of course go into detail regarding the inflation news, explaining just what it is in detail, what it tells us, and pointing out the sheer idiocracy of certain people. So first of all, what actually happened in the markets? Well, as you can see, equities for the most part fell, but they didn't do awfully. The S&P 500 as a whole only fell by about 0.3%, and the Nasdaq only fell by 0.4%, and most sectors were stagnant or they just fell slightly, except for energy, which as you can see did quite well. Why? Well, because energy prices went back up after falling for a couple of days, and as you might expect, companies that sell oil are rather dependent on oil prices to make their profits, and that means that their stock prices are largely dependent on oil prices too. Now, markets around the world didn't really do much better. Small declines across the world saw the MSCI index fall by about 0.5% too. Now, there were no major changes in regards to currencies. There were, of course, lots of claims as usual about the ruble doing really well, but in reality, no one can actually exchange rubles for the rates that you see online because no one really can exchange rubles at all due to sanctions. So the Russian state is pretty much dictating that price. So I would caution people against necessarily believing all that they read regarding that in the news. In terms of the dollar though, slightly strong as usual. The euro, yen and pound are slightly weak as usual too. Now bond prices actually rose, seeing some inflows for once, but not nearly enough to actually reverse the trend of bond prices collapsing across the board over recent weeks and months. US 10-year Treasury yields still are incredibly high, sitting at 2.73% for instance, just down a few basis points from yesterday's high. The same story again is seen everywhere else as well. German and British 10-year yields are down 3 or 4 basis points each yesterday. Gold prices rose once more. Yep, I really do believe there is still room for them to move further upwards, as evidenced by the fact that prices have been trending upwards. Prices rose specifically 1.2% yesterday. Now gold is sitting at $1,970 an ounce, getting close to that $2,000 mark once more. Oil prices, as I mentioned briefly earlier, jumped back up after declining quite steadily for a few days. WTI crude is now back up above $100 again after rising 6% yesterday alone, and Brent crude oil, as always, is a little bit higher at $106 a barrel. Finally, the crypto market actually stabilized yesterday and didn't really see any major moves, with everything just kind of doing nothing for the most part. Bitcoin is sitting pretty still at $40,000, with Ethereum sitting at about $3,000. Most altcoins didn't really move much at all either, up or down 0.5% or so, pretty uneventful for the most part. The exception to that was Shiba Inu coin, and the fact that I even have to talk about this makes me damn near suicidal. That coin got listed on Coinbase, which just means that millions of people can now easily buy it when they couldn't before, so the price spiked up 15% on that news. Pretty crazy and volatile, but it is an altcoin and a dog altcoin at that, so stupid irrationality and volatility is fully expected. Now, the big news for yesterday that drove these markets was, of course, inflation, and it was all just a bit insane. The US saw 1.2% inflation over the last month alone. That is 15% annualized, which is crazy, stupid high. But because that was mostly in line with what analysts expected, investors are claiming it was all priced in, so markets didn't drop by too much. Year-over-year inflation came in at a brand new 41-year high of 8.5%, while interest rates are at 0.5%, which means, once again, real interest rates are today lower than they were last month. So if you think that the Fed is doing their job and tightening monetary policy, you are blind. Real interest rates are negative 8%. They have never been this low in history, so of course inflation is going to spiral out of control. It is so damn obvious. Now, the details of the CPI data from the US are mostly as expected. Huge increases in the price of energy driving that crazy high 1.2% figure, but that number was actually dragged down quite a bit by a decrease in used car prices, which funnily enough has reinvigorated the utterly idiotic inflation is transitory crowd, who are now once again claiming that not only are we at the peak of inflation, but that we are about to see deflation month over month for years as prices reduce back down to where they used to be. This is all based on the fact that used car prices fell 5% in 1 month after rising over 100% for the best part of a year, and I'm sure I don't need to explain just how naive this is. It's also worth remembering that these people currently claiming deflation is on the way are the same people who have been wrong every single month about inflation for the last year, consistently claiming the top is here and it's clean sailing onwards, only to be proven wrong time and time again, so listening to them is not all the best idea. Now, to make matters even worse for this argument and for these people, that whole argument is based on used car prices falling. But VW, Volkswagen, one of the biggest and most successful car manufacturers in the world, came out and said that they expect the chip shortage to extend into 2024, which means fewer new cars for another 2 years minimum, and higher prices for both new and used cars will be maintained. This is just your daily reminder to ignore anyone who claims transitory is or ever was a possibility. Now, of course, the oil price spike didn't ease inflation concerns either. Investors were getting used to oil prices declining steadily and sort of got it stuck in their heads that energy prices across the board would be decreasing back down to $70 for a barrel of oil. But Brent crude at $106 a barrel is still incredibly high and will still cause consistent inflation all over the world. The Biden administration is absolutely terrified of this inflation and they are flapping because it is destroying their approval rates, as you would expect. The average person today in the US is earning 3.5% less per week in real terms than a year ago. Yes, the average person in the US took a 3.5% real terms pay cut over the last year at the same time as asset prices boomed and the billionaires made billions more after Biden claimed that he would correct the injustices in the American economic system. So of course, people don't like him, he's pretty damn useless. It is though worth noting before people comment that Trump pursued the same economic policy when he was in power, and he actually started the money printer back in 2020, so it's not like he's blameless here either, but Biden is the one who kept that money printer going on for 2 years too long, simply to keep his rich friends rich. Now, their disastrous polling is being responded to with what can only really be described as White House propaganda. Jen Psaki is specifically using the term Putin's price hike to explain away all of this inflation, trying to put the blame entirely on someone else, but this tweet here encapsulates it perfectly. This inflation goes far further back than Putin's war in Ukraine, and that has contributed to inflation, no doubt, but it is not even close to being the primary cause of the reason Americans are poorer today than they were a year ago. Now, to make matters worse, the Federal Reserve is about to change the way inflation is calculated once again because they are corrupt and immoral and refuse to do their jobs, and I genuinely don't see an end to this. A government that actually cares about its people has to come into power and implement controls that make this sort of fraudulent data illegal, or there's just no stopping it from happening time and time again. This topic, sadly, is absolutely huge and it deserves a video all on its own, so look out for that in the future. Now, don't worry, Americans, though, because you are not the only country being governed by total idiots. My home country of the UK saw our inflation data come through yesterday as well, and we just hit a brand new 30-year high as well of 7%. So we are really only a touch behind you. Across the rest of Europe, it is just as bad as well. In Ireland and Italy, it's 7% inflation. In Germany, it's 7.5%. Greece is hitting 8%. Belgium is 9%. Spain is 9.5%. And in the Netherlands, inflation right now is 12%. It seems that no matter where we go, our governments just love to steal our wealth from us by inflating it away. Now, if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to bless the YouTube algorithm. If you want more content like this, then check out our Patreon and join our community of investors. You get access to our Discord, loads of exclusive content like insight into my portfolio and buy and sell alerts for all my own investments. There's a link in the description to masterworks.io, a site that allows you to buy fractional shares of art from world-famous artists like Banksy, which can be a great way to diversify your portfolio with on-market correlated assets. It's completely free to sign up, so if that sounds interesting, then make sure to check it out. There's also a link down below in the description to BlockFi, which will give you up to $250 in free Bitcoin when you use it. You can also get 9% interest on stablecoins like USDC, which is a far higher rate than you get from any savings account these days. Thank you all for watching. Stay stoic. Until next time.